From Canada, Citizens Forum, where we look at the important issues of the day through a lens of democracy and media and try to figure out, how do we build a better country for ourselves? Hello and welcome to From Canada Citizens Forum. It is Saturday, June the 15th, 2025. My name is Jack Atkin. This is a news and current affairs show with a kind of Canadian perspective and with the underlying theme of I want more democracy in Canada and I also want a free press in Canada. So news for this week, I guess number one, just happened a day or two ago, Israel attacking Iran. Iran has responded. I don't know, who knows where this is going to go. So some questions. The first question is, does Israel have the right to attack Iran? This guy, who has some expertise in the field, says no, they don't. I can see Israel's point of view is that Iran wants to build nuclear weapons, which will be a threat to Israel. But seemingly under international law, that doesn't work. And secondly, Israel already has nuclear weapons. So, you can see how Iran and other countries would feel threatened by that. So if the United States and Israel and Russia and China and Europe can have nuclear weapons, why can't Iran? And yet, on the other hand, who wants more nuclear weapons? It's crazy, and we can't use them. It's a mess. So what's happening is that, and I just want to talk a little bit about what are the potential impacts on the world coming from what could be or may not be a war in the Middle East. And this is from BBC. Israel, Iran strikes. What are the worst case scenarios? And what they say is America gets dragged in, which is who knows, right? But if the United States gets seriously involved, that's one more disaster. Number two, the Gulf nations get dragged in, including Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Qatar. The oil fields could easily be hit. And these countries, it's interesting. I was talking to somebody the other day. He said these countries, their governments are the enemy of Iran, but the people absolutely do not support Israel. So even though the governments do. So, that's another thing that has to be factored into all of this. There's a lot of oil there. If there is a shutoff of oil to the world, as much as I want to see reduced oil use in the world, prices will go up. And since everybody's using oil for everything, that could be, another economic disaster when we're already in an economic disaster. I don't know what this one is all about, but there's also the threat of radioactive releases, which is not a good thing. And I guess what they're saying here is that if Israel doesn't destroy Iran's nuclear capability, then Iran is certainly going to try to build perhaps some weapons as fast as they can. And down here, there's a global economic shock. The price of oil, they say, is already soaring. I don't think it is soaring. It's gone up by about 7%. What if Iran tries to close the Straits of Hormuz, further restricting the movement of oil? Yeah, Iran definitely has the capability to do that. It can hit oil tankers nearby. And if one is hit or even one is threatened, then it will stop or slow down the flow of oil from especially Saudi Arabia, I guess, but the other countries as well, to a world that, desperately needs oil, can't live without it. So that's definitely something else. And if we look at one more thing, and this goes back to something that happened 50 years ago, and that was very, very important. This is from our friends at AI. And this goes back to the 1973 Arab-Israeli War, also known as the Yom Kippur War, triggered an oil crisis and contributed to stagflation in the 1970s. And believe me, I was around then, and that stagflation completely changed at least the way North America is run. I'm talking about Canada, the United States, maybe much of the rest of the world as well. But stagflation means we had a large inflation because of that war, because oil prices shot up. So we had a big inflation. And when you have a big inflation, it's supposed to be because the economy is humming along and everybody's doing well. So there's so much money that prices are going up. That's the theory of inflation. But this was called a stagflation because we were having a big inflation, but we were also having economic stagnation. Not a lot of jobs. The economy was slowing down because oil prices were high. So what happened from that was the people who run the world said that the economic theory, which was mainly Keynesianism, that was the economic road we were on following World War II. And Keynesianism, named after John Maynard Keynes, maybe the world's leading economist during World War II, he said the role of government was to help the public, to help people, and to build a good world for everybody. That's my reading or my understanding of what Keynesianism was all about. And, at least here in Canada, I grew up in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and they were prosperous times. We didn't have homelessness. Housing was not a problem. If you wanted to rent or buy a house, you did it. It wasn't that expensive. Nothing like it is now. The healthcare system worked. I remember doctors even coming to the house, right? As crazy as that may seem. But things changed in the 70s because of this war. And here we are with the threat of another war in that area. And if it's not a major war, still the disruption of oil flow to the world. And if that happens, then it's going to have a major impact, perhaps as major as the one following this war in the 1970s. And to me, these things don't happen because they're unplanned. The United States Trump, all the American government fully support what Israel is doing, even though they know what the threat is to the entire world because of oil, and never mind the hundreds and hundreds or thousands and thousands or more people who are going to be dying in one more crazy war. Is there not a better way? But here we go, and we'll see what the economic impact is from all of this, as well as all the other impacts. So stay tuned with all of that. We're in the early days of climate change. So, in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, some tens of thousands of people were forced out of their homes because of the wildfires. A lot of them are returning now. There has been damage to communities. I think major damage to a few small towns in northern Saskatchewan. A couple of weeks ago, there was massive flooding in Australia. I don't know, there are large, or maybe not are, but there were large fires in Siberia a couple of weeks ago. So, I mean, that's the question. Is climate change getting worse? Or some people say, does climate change even exist? Which is a fair enough question. I mean, I think climate change is happening because I can sort of see it with my own eyes. You know, here in Victoria, we've had, smoke over the city in not the last couple of years, but a few years before that, which I've never seen before. A couple of days ago, I think Toronto was number one, just ahead of Delhi, Delhi in India, for the worst air quality in the world, and that was from the fires in Western Canada. And we're only in June. We'll see what's going to happen. But one thing that there is no talk about is what we can do about this, because the only way forward that I can see, if we want to reduce climate change, is we have to consume less of everything, or at least of many things, certainly cars and certainly airplanes. But there's no talk of that. There's talk of how to protect our towns and cities by whatever we can do to protect them. But that doesn't deal with the root cause, if I'm correct. And, for me, climate change is happening. I can see it, but people don't believe it. That's fine. I think a majority of people do think that the climate is changing because of the greenhouse gases we're putting into the air. I mean, for me, I'm happy to follow what's called the precautionary principle. There's a chance this is happening. Maybe we should, deal with it. And plus, even the people I know who don't think climate change is happening, they still think we should be driving less and flying less and consuming less plastics and, just toning down the way we are on this earth. But at the moment, there's no discussion in that. And the reason I think there's no discussion is that our media is owned by corporate Canada, and it's not corporate Canada's interest at this point in time to be talking about reducing. Instead, we see Mark Carney, Prime Minister Mark Carney, and the premiers pushing to more of everything. We have to have more of everything. We don't have time anymore to look at pipelines. We just have to build them, and more mining so we can build electric cars. I don't think electric cars are the way forward. I think virtually no cars is the only way forward. But I don't know if people want to move in that direction. But I also know that it doesn't matter if we want to move in that direction, because we remain basically irrelevant in the decision-making process. Carney and the premiers are telling us more, more, more. If that's what we want, then okay, and then that's what we have to do. But we're never asked, are we willing to have great public transportation that's clean, safe, comfortable, pleasant, right? We can have that. And are we willing to then use our cars a lot less? But, here in Victoria, our public transit is in many ways not pleasant. And, I right now I'm taking the bus every day to work, and, everybody does their best, but, it's it could be better. Let's put it. And trains would be a nice step in the right direction. But we don't have trains here. We used to, but not anymore. So, there are directions we can go in terms of actually dealing with the fires. And the question is, do we want to deal with the fires, or is that, well, we'll see. We'll see what we're going to do. The G7 starts tomorrow. The G7 is a meeting of 7 of the world's larger economies. Certainly not the largest. It's the United States, Canada, Britain, France, Italy, Germany, and Japan. There's an organization called BRICS, B-R-I-C-S, which has been started essentially by Russia and China. And I read a couple of weeks ago that Indonesia had recently, I think they were joining the BRICS or looking at joining the BRICS, and it's a counter to the G7 and et cetera. And I thought, oh, well, Indonesia. So I looked up Indonesia, and it turns out it has a GDP greater than that of Great Britain right now. So, the G7 is not the world-leading body that it pretends to be. But anyways, the meeting is happening. There are a lot of guests, like, for example, Prime Minister Modi of India is coming. I think the president of South Africa has been invited, and Brazil. So a lot of people are invited who are not members of the G7, but, they want to attend and see what's going on. So Carney lays out Canada's G7 summit priorities, and it's starting tomorrow, Sunday, and it's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Here it says, the G7 Leaders Summit will be held in Kananaskis from June 15 to 17. Carney said that Canada will seek agreements and coordinated action on 3 core missions. The first is protecting Canadian communities and the world by strengthening peace and security. Now, that means spending more on the military. And Mr. Carney is clearly in favor of that. We're going up to 2%, which is, I think, another $10 to $15 billion immediately from where we're now at. And we're going to do that right away. And NATO is now talking about raising the price of admission by another 1 or 2% of GDP. And for Canada, another 1% increase will be another $30 billion a year that we'll spend on the military. And I've got nothing against the military. I would kind of maybe aim it in different directions and spend the money in different ways and want to use it to do different things. But what do Canadians want our military to be? And how much do we want to spend on it? That, to me, is an important question. But we're told we have to because Russia is the great threat. And personally, I don't believe that story. I think the corporations that run Canada and the United States are the truly great threat to me. And they run the world, these corporations. But since they own the media and largely control our governments, we're not going to hear that message. And maybe the message is wrong. But for me, I think the corporations are the greatest threat that we Canadians face. So back to Mr. Carney. Once again, his first important thing for the G7 is to strengthen peace and security. Second, countering foreign interference. And again, that's, portrayed as Russia and China, when I think it's the corporations that are the greatest interference that we have to deal with. And Mr. Carney comes from that world. Mr. Carney is Mr. Corporate. And then going on to, he says, transnational crime is very important. And Canada has been, for many, many years, it seems, quite weak on transnational crime. Our banks make lots of money from it. And our governments seem to make it fairly easy for transnational crime to happen in Canada. Now, is Mr. Carney going to do anything? I don't know. And lastly is improving joint responses to wildfires. So yeah, we're going to improve our response to wildfires, but we're not going to do anything to stop wildfires by reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And in fact, everything Mr. Carney talks about is about having more mining, more oil, more LNG, more pipelines. I assume also cutting down more forests and as much as they can do. The second important thing he's talking about is building energy security and accelerating the digital transition through fortifying critical mineral supply chains and using artificial intelligence to boost economic growth. And finally, Carney said, Canada will push to secure new partnerships, I don't know what that means, that will catalyze enormous private investment to build stronger infrastructure, create higher paying jobs, and open dynamic markets where businesses can compete and succeed. Okay, I mean, we all hope for the best, and, it's nice to have prosperity, but we can't destroy the planet, and nor do we want to continue what we're doing in Canada now, which is the rich are getting richer from all of these things that Mr. Carney is talking about, but many people are getting poorer to the point where hundreds of thousands or millions of Canadians can barely afford to pay the rent or pay the mortgage and still eat, right? And that is being all pushed aside right now in this push for more. I just want to move on to the last topic for today, and that's about the measles issue. The media is really pushing this as if they care about public health or people's health, and I don't think the media do. That's just my thought based on a lifetime of watching them. I mean, half of us are going to get cancer. Half of Canadians will in their lifetime get cancer. And it's getting worse, right? So 5 years or 10 years from now, it could be even a worse percentage. And the reason for that is the corporations have poisoned everything, including us. Even when I was a kid, cancer was rare, at least rare-ish. Now half of us get it. But the media have never said anything, like this, that cancer is out of control. Let's put some of the corporate executives who are poisoning us in prison. We'll never see that kind of a headline. But they're making, and I don't want to minimize it, nobody wants to get measles, nobody wants to get sick, but they are really making a big story out of this measles outbreak, now the worst in nearly half a century. And that may be true, I don't know. Here's a chart. I don't know what it shows, but okay, so it's a big story. But I really question whether the media care about the health of the children and people who are getting or will get measles, or is what they really want to make vaccines more popular and hopefully mandatory, because that's what they seem to be pushing for years now. I mean, that message is never ending, and that's kind of what this measles story is also all about. So if we take a look at the other side of the story, this is from Children's Health Defense. It's a group from the United States, I think started by Robert Kennedy Jr. And I follow them. I like the directions they take. There's certainly a lot of science in here, and etc. And this is a chart which I've shown before, which we've shown before on this show. I first saw this chart, or something very similar to it, in a friend's medical school textbook about 40 or 45 years ago. And I never forgot it. It surprised me, although it didn't have any impact on my thinking. I just remember thinking, this chart isn't what I thought reality was. So this is called mean annual death rate from measles in children under 15 years of age, England and Wales. And I've seen the same charts for the United States and maybe for Canada as well. I don't remember. So you can see back in around 1850, the death rate per million was about 1,000. And it went up 1870, 1880, 1890 was the peak, 1900, and then it started to go down. And people attribute the drop in the death rate from measles to less poverty, better public health, maybe more central heating, but basically just better public health. Because as one doctor said, poverty is the mother of measles. So, and yeah. And then we can see that from about 1915, there was a major drop off until we hit around 1950 when the death rate per million is almost down to zero. The virus was identified. The vaccine was not yet developed and not used. Okay, so we can see that the vaccines did not get rid of measles. And yet that's always the message we're told, that vaccines got rid of measles and got rid of all of these diseases. And, you have to wonder, why is that story told? And the only reason I can think it's being told is because the corporations are making a lot of money out of vaccines. And they have so much control over the media and our governments that this story is, and I think a lot of people in media and government no doubt honestly believe, as I did, the story that vaccines stopped these communicable diseases. And if they did, I'm willing to change my mind, but I have never seen an answer to this question. And as I said, the first time I saw this graph was in a friend's medical school textbook. Here's pertussis, which is whooping cough, which is pretty much exactly the same deaths per million from 1850. You can see it was high and then going down. The vaccine was developed here in 1935. Antibiotics came into play here, and it continued to go down. But it's pretty clear that pertussis or whooping cough was also not removed by vaccines. So, that's why doesn't the media tell us that? And at least let us have the debate, the discussion, but they don't. And it's not good in a country that thinks it's a democracy and thinks it has a free press, that the media is telling us a story and now painting as the enemy people who don't get vaccinated or don't believe the official story, right? They want us, and believe me, if measles are safe and effective, I am 100% for them. But, comparing getting a vaccination to eating a carrot, there is a risk. And that's something else the media doesn't tell us, and neither do our governments. Now, there's never really been, as far as I know, a government-done study that compares fully vaccinated children to fully unvaccinated children. They won't do that study. That's something that Kennedy in the States has talked about a lot, and he wants to do those studies. But some independent researchers have done them. And I'm not saying this guy is right or wrong. We've shown this before. But yeah, here it is. This is from Hooker and Miller. Maybe in the top right corner, you can see Brian Hooker. I think he's a doctor. And this is a small study done. I don't remember the details, but it showed in red fully vaccinated children, and in blue fully unvaccinated children. 2021. So the first chart shows severe allergies, and it's about 4-1. The second one is gastrointestinal disorders at about 13-1. The next one is asthma, which is 17-1. And this is called odds ratio for obtaining a diagnosis. I'm not sure exactly what that means, But I think what these charts are showing is that if you are fully vaccinated, there are side effects, right? The bottom three, the chart is a little bit different. So it shows a different, but the numbers are kind of the same. Autism is about 5-1. ADHD is about 20, let's say 20-1. And chronic ear infections are 27-1. And again, that's comparing vaccinated children to unvaccinated children. Is this study correct? I don't know. But I do know there have not been government studies. And I don't know why. Well, I do know why, but... and again, we should just be having the discussion. The fact that we can't have the discussion on a very important public health issue, that the media censors the information we get, that our top politicians refuse to, let's have the discussion, but we can't. And the reason we can't, I think, is the power of the pharmaceutical industry. Just as we can't talk about reducing consumption because of the power of the oil industry. And we all have plastic in our brains, but nobody seems to care about that in the field of public health because of the power of the plastics industry and the banks. We have, why do we have a housing disaster? Who's making all the money from that? Our media not only fails us, but it betrays us. It's not worthy of our trust. And we've got to start distrusting the media and our politicians and our governments at a visceral level. These people are not worthy of our trust. So let's stop trusting them, right? But we're also powerless and leaderless and disorganized and everything else. So it's tough to move ahead, but that's for next week. So thank you all very much for watching this segment of From Canada Citizens Forum, and check out our website, fromcanadacitizensforum.ca. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.